Throughout history, the world has experienced a variety of economic catastrophes, from the stock market crash of 1929 to the oil shortages of the 1970s. We've seen bubbles burst in everything from real estate to internet startups to tulips. So economists, although not great at preventing a catastrophe, have a pretty good idea of how to respond to them. But something like the coronavirus creates a whole new set of problems. A recession is often the result of one of three types of shocks: a demand shock, a supply shock, or a financial shock. A demand shock is when consumers and businesses stop spending because they fear that the economy is going to get worse. If I'm worried about the economy and losing my job, then I might not go buy a new car. And since the car company has less revenue, they don't invest in future projects, or maybe they lay off workers. These workers have less incomes, and so they spend less, leading to more unemployment. This is your textbook recession, and it's all caused from a lack of confidence. A supply shock is different. It's when essential goods and services become more costly or unavailable. This is the oil crisis of the 1970s, and in many ways, it's much worse. Inflation tends to rise, and businesses lay off workers since they can't produce their products. The third type of shock involves the financial sector: a stock market crash or a failing bank. These prevent borrowing and lending, which leads to less spending and less production. The problem with COVID-19 or any pandemic is potentially it causes all three of these. If I'm worried about my family getting sick, then I'm not going to go out to restaurants or go on vacation. Multiply that mindset by hundreds of thousands of people, and that's a lot of spending that doesn't take place. That's a demand shock. And if I'm a business in a quarantine area, I can't produce if my workers aren't allowed to come to work. And even if I'm not in an affected area, I may still not get the parts or resources I need from my global suppliers. That's why China is the absolute worst place for this COVID-19 to start. China is the world's factory. Everything they've done to contain the virus is wreaking havoc on global supply chains, and that could cause a supply shock. And as for a financial shock, just look at stock exchanges around the world. Last week, the S&P 500 had its worst week since October 2008, dropping almost 12%. This problem has economists and policymakers looking for a solution. Economists will tell you that there's two main ways to fight a recession. The first is fiscal policy. That's when the government lowers taxes or increases spending to promote consumer and business spending. But if a country or a region is quarantined, then a tax cut's not going to help very much. People can't get out there to go spend the money. And the same thing applies to government spending. The government can't go produce a bridge or buy things if there's nothing available to be purchased. A recession caused by a global pandemic can't easily be solved with the government just giving people money. The second way to fight a recession is monetary policy. The Federal Reserve and other central banks can lower interest rates to encourage more spending. But, at least in the United States, that's likely not going to be very effective. Interest rates are already at historic lows, and dropping them even further is unlikely to promote massive spending, especially when there's uncertainty about the virus. If the outbreak in the United States gets really bad, economists and policymakers will need to come up with some innovative ways to create confidence and promote spending. The economic impact of this virus has less to do with the disease than the public's reaction to the disease. The chance of catching COVID-19 is small, and the chance of dying from it is minuscule, especially if you compare it to other contagious diseases like the flu. Shutting down cities and countries and limiting trade and commerce is doing the damage to the economy, not the virus itself. Economically speaking, the best scenario is that the disease is contained, and only the countries that had the largest outbreaks are going to experience a recession. The worst case scenario is that the virus continues to spread and that containment efforts limit production and international trade, causing a global recession. But if you want to help and prevent that from happening, then go out and buy that new car, go on vacation, and go and start that business. The sooner people feel comfortable going about their lives, the better the health of the economy. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.